the creative process is elusive to many people. We can formulate it to an extent, we can kind of understand what it involves, but it's not to the point where I can say if you follow these 3 steps, you can overcome writer's block every single time and produce the most amazing original ideas. It doesn't really work like that. But what I can do is share what's worked for me every single time, maybe not immediately, but eventually, as well as what's worked with my students, what I've helped them with. So as with most challenges, it's good to take a step back to get a bigger perspective on the matter. Now, I like to look at the creative process like an input-output relationship. As far as the output goes, that would be the technical understanding of composition. If we understand counterpoint, musical forms, harmonic relationships, then we will be able to produce a working composition. But without the input, that process may be a bit may lack depth. And so what we might have a tendency to do is to view musical form kind of like the quadratic formula, where you just plug in values and it produces the answer. So frequently with students, one of the complaints that I hear is that they don't know what to write about. And I call that writing music for music's sake. It can be done, but it may lack, as I mentioned, the depth when the input is ignored. And so think about some of the musical examples throughout history. Oftentimes they weren't just symphonies, they were symphonies, they were an idea of something else conveyed through a symphony. So Shostakovich would write in response to the volatile political climate of his time. Sibelius would be inspired by nature. Rachmaninoff would convey the Isle of the Dead by Böcklin using 5 beats per measure to show the irregular rocking of the waves against the boat. So we see that these composers, they responded to external stimuli as motivation and inspiration for a composition. And it's good to kind of think about where our ideas actually come from, so that we don't lack that depth. And for exercises, that's perfectly fine, but it can help us greatly to write bigger pieces of music, better ideas. So a lot of times what I do, and I encourage my students to do this as well, is when there is writer's block, is to stop and read a book. Go for a walk or a hike, go to an art gallery. Not only does it reset the brain, but it actually it allows more opportunities for connections to be made between subjects and fields. So my fascination with mathematics led to the realization of the symmetrical connections between chords, scales, and other areas in music that are the same as in quantum mechanics, chemistry, the Rubik's Cube puzzle, many other examples. And we can actually use those to manipulate our understanding of tonal relationships, to create auditory illusions, musical paradoxes, cadenzas that are effective. So I'm always reading at least a fiction and a non-fiction book at any given time. I'm always learning a new subject. If you're right-handed, learn to write left-handed. All of these things, I can't say that being ambidextrous in itself will help you to be a better composer, but what you're doing is you're training your brain to learn new things and to work differently. So I also encourage my students to have a notebook and list down the things that inspire them, not necessarily for a composition project, but just in general, because when they learn about double function sonata allegro form, they may see an idea that they wrote down in their notebook that will suddenly click and will be more effectively expressed through that form. So write all of those ideas down, things that interest you, read more, learn more, more subjects, and feel free to comment below about other musical examples that you can think of that were externally influenced as well, and other ideas for music for future videos as well.